Hello, my name is Kolby Kindle. I am 32. I'm originally from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but I live in New York City now. I am an actor, singer, dancer, and I am an artist.
Hey man, I'm so grateful to you for deciding to do this. When we got a chance to hang out when you were in town on the tour of Waitress, and
Yep.
I was blown away by your story and how much it sounded like a journey that I wanted to share. So I remember thinking, oh, I've got to get him, because I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to see themselves in his story and to see if they can't map out their course in the artist's journey through him. So I want to get right in. I want you to tell me a little bit about the environment you grew up in.
I grew up in Edmond, Oklahoma, so a little north of Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a very supportive household. Both of my parents are very hardworking. One brother, one sister. I grew up in the church,
Right.
singing, dancing, acting, doing all that. And that's kind of where I got my start in the arts. But I grew up in a very, very supportive house, so very, very, very strong, and like very encouraging.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had you came to this from an environment that was already saying, yes, we want to encourage you to introduce you to the arts. And you also came through public schooling,
Mm-hmm.
which was a difference for when you went to college, because you ended up going to a college that wasn't a public school.
Right.
What was your exposure or your access to art in the public school system here in Oklahoma?
It wasn't. Oh, I went to Edmond North High School. It had a drama department.
Okay.
But like most schools, most of the funding goes towards the sports, and
Right.
the arts kind of are the last to get any funding, any support. But so instead, I started doing Lyric Academy.
Okay.
I started at a place called On Broadway Productions in Edmond, and then I guess graduated onto Lyric Academy, and then that's kind of where I got serious about training.
Okay.
Because it wasn't in the high schools that much.
Right. So yeah, you didn't really see that. And then, so you're going to this, your parents are literally investing in your artistic education.
I was very privileged in that way to have parents who were willing to invest in my love for the arts.
Wow. I think that's really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly because so many people in Oklahoma are like, I want you to find something that you love, something that's a trade, something that's going to make you some money. There's no value in pursuing, things that they're going to, it's kind of Troy Maxson and fences. They ain't gonna let you get nowhere with that football,
Well, actually, football, I think my parents would have been a little more at ease if I chose that.
So that really kind of opens us up. And I know this is a question that you've had before, but I wonder if time has changed your perspective on the answer. Can you describe what I call the point of no return? There's a place where every artist, I think, goes, I want to do that. That's the thing I want to do. What's that? What was that for you? Do you know? Do you remember?
I mean, like I was saying, because believe me, I tried to play sports. I tried to play basketball, and I think I'm pretty good at basketball. But I tried football and all that stuff, because that's what all the boys my age were doing, especially young black boys in Edmond. And so I was like, but it was something about, I was a very quiet kid, and so there's something about me getting on stage and me singing and stuff like that, where my parents were like, oh, he really blossoms here. He's outgoing, he's daring, he's bold. So let's encourage that. And so that's kind of where I started to, at a very young age, realize, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing. Didn't know in what capacity, but I knew that this is what I was born to do. That's so cliche, but.
No. So your parents saw that. I mean, they saw it in you.
They really did. And but the thing is, they aren't theater people. Like, they didn't really start doing, they took me to see shows, and I think they enjoyed theater, but they weren't hip on the business. And so I think that they were like, what do you want to do? What are you good at? Okay, we'll invest in this. And just to have that support is unheard of, especially when it comes to the arts.
Right. Well, I mean, as we've been, and obviously we'll come around to some of these subjects, but there's been a lot of national conversation about diversity in the arts. And I think rightfully everybody's looking at what they've done, what they should have done more of to help bolster that. but it's one of those conversations that I hasn't been very much part of, is the parental structure, the origin stories. Those parents who say there's value in this, and there's value in it because you love it and you excel in it. I think taking a moment to really reflect on what a gift that was, because that created Kolby Kindle. That provided the springboard for you to be the artist that you've become, which is obviously extraordinary. And so I think that's great that we take a moment to kind of say thanks to your mom and dad, and encourage other moms and dads to be right there in line with that.
Yeah, I mean, I always say it goes back. You need leaders. You need people of color in leadership in many things, so people, young guys like me, could see that and be like, I could do that. And like the teachers I had at Lyric Academy were amazing, and on Broadway were awesome. But I think if my parents would have seen an older Black man doing theater in my area, teaching it, leading in it, then I would feel like, oh, I could do that too. But I just honestly didn't have that. I had wonderful leaders, no shade to them, but honestly, it was just, I didn't have another Black man in the business doing it. So I think that the fact that I had parents who supported me was one thing, but then to also have, if I would have had someone who was like me doing theater, then I think they probably would have felt a little better about me going into it. You just didn't see a lot of it.
Right.
I mean, I had you. I remember you, and I remember like I was like, that's a Black man in theater doing it and doing it well, leading, and that all I had in Oklahoma.
I couldn't be more grateful that I was part of your experience, because I too, like you, and I'm trying to think, I don't remember seeing a man of color involved in theater arts until post high school. Tyrone Wilkerson was in Tulsa doing Theater North, and he directed a show. Was one of my first shows to get to do out of high school. But then I came to this area to go to college, Langston University. I went to Langston University, still know people of color doing theater. We when I became artistic director in 2000, we started trying to do shows. I remember specifically Once on This Island was in there, failed experiment as that was in so many ways. It was an effort to reach out and say, I want other people like me to be in a show. I need to build an audience. And I realize now that was way ambitious for the environment. I didn't have nearly that many people. But foolishly, I went, if we don't try big, then we're not going to get anything. So, the fact, your story is already amplified. I could already see my story in it and going, wow, I just realized that I hadn't seen that either.
I didn't see a lot of that. And so in my mind, I was like, well, I got to go for these roles up against people who look nothing like me, because the roles for them are the shows that are being produced. So I'm like, I wonder if they can think outside the box and see me in that role, and like, that was always my hope. Or like, I hope I can get that one token spot, that little spot in the corner. I want them to let me dance in that corner,
Yeah. Wow. So let's, you're working, when you came to work at the Pollard, you did Once on This Island. Where was that in your journey? This is post high school, pre-college?
I was sophomore in high school. I think I was 16, 17.
Wow. Yeah. You're already very talented, which was a testament. So then you finish high school and you make the choice to go to, and I hope I'm saying this right, Otterbein University, which is an unconventional choice for theater. It's an unconventional choice all the way around. How did that decision come to be?
Well, to be honest, they at the time they had one of the top musical theater programs and / acting programs in the country.
Wow.
And so I remember I auditioned in Chicago at Unified Auditions. And you've heard of that, I'm sure, where all the colleges come together. Sorry, it's New York time, so this is when we start cheering. We start cheering on the nurses, so you might hear some.
and we should be cheering.
Yeah, I'll reach my head out there. No. But what was I saying? Yeah, and so I got into that school. They only took there were only 5 guys, 5 girls in my musical theater class, and so it was very selective. And that was one of my top choices. So when I got in, I was in heaven. It was everything.
When I guess what I say is unusual, unconventional choice, what I mean by that is because you'd been a public school kid, you're putting out some money, to go here. And it wasn't OCU, because so many of the normal path is, well, you're right here in Oklahoma, go to OCU. You literally shot for the moon.
Yeah. No, honestly, it was because like in my mind it was like I didn't even know you could go to school for theater, like for especially musical theater. Right. And so I remember Cindy Harrod, who Cindy Harrod, came to me and she was like, "Have you started looking at colleges?" And I was like, "For what?" I was like, "Yeah, but like I was looking to go to be like a veterinarian or something." She's like, "No, for theater." I was like, "Really, that can happen?" And so if it weren't for her and Chris Harrod, they seriously gave me all the pamphlets and they set me up on these auditions and they coached me and all that stuff. Wow. And like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have even thought it was a possibility. Right. To even go to school for theater.
That's how inaccessible that information was.
For sure.
And you said this earlier. You said you were incredibly privileged in that way. And so imagine a kid who's never gone to see a show, who has got that amazing amount of talent, and yet his parents don't know that on Broadway exists, that Lyric Academy exists. They certainly can't afford to send them. They're having a hard time figuring out how to have them babysit while they're at work. So what a gift.
Yeah. I had my parents were working extra hours at work just so I could take a voice lesson. And then once I was able to get a job, I was putting money aside I was like, well, I'm going to take over this. So I started paying for my own voice lessons at age like 17. Wow. Like put money aside to pay for my dance classes, to pay for that. So I was working at Target, and like my parents like, we'll cover your insurance on your car, if you want to pay for that. And that's where I guess like I didn't have the resources, but I've always been such a go-getter and like learn that I just used what I had.
Yeah. You are what I call a hustler. You hustle, like you put the hustle work in to get what you're after.
It hasn't stopped yet either.
Yes, I can tell. So you're at Otterbein. What is the process that they put you through to help prepare you, and you specifically, to be able to elevate a show, to be in a show, to prepare you to lead a show, which you would eventually do? I mean, because that had to be a unique experience. I'm guessing it was not a very big program, so it's a lot more isolated. They have a lot more time to work with you individually. Mm-hmm. But what was that process like for you? What was the experience like, particularly being an actor of color?
Well, I was the only Black male in my class, and I think the class above me didn't have any Black people in musical theater or below me. But so I was kind of alone in that. I was only a man of color in musical theater. And again, it was that, I guess, because living in Oklahoma, where that was always the case anyway, mm-hmm. I was kind of forced to think outside the box for myself. It was like, well, I'm auditioning for these shows that aren't made for people like me, And so I remember my freshman year, we did Hello Dolly, and I was like, who am I going to be in Hello Dolly? And I was the German waiter. Like, so I'm sit up here learning German and stuff. And like, it was kind of like, that's what was so good about that program, is it did challenge me to think outside the box, because I had to, because they were doing shows because they didn't have people like me to do them. So I had to make it work. Right.
They weren't going to be putting on a production of Ain't Misbehaving
or Color Purple. Yeah.
Or Color Purple. Right. Right. So you were finding a way to get in where you fit in, and hopefully forcing them to see you fitting in places where they hadn't thought about it before.
Yeah. In my senior year, we did Pippin, and I played the leading player. And that was the first time I was like, okay, this is a role for me. Like, I'm not saying they picked the show for me, but that was the first time I felt like, oh, so you are considering the fact that I could kind of find what I do and pick a show based on that. Right. Like, well, we have this kind of talent pool. Let's think about everybody in the talent pool.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're doing this program. You're working through the logistics. You're discovering your abilities at the university. You're going to the course load. What is the process that takes you from there through graduation? What's next? How do you make the determination? A kid who's not really, that didn't even know before this that there was college for this. How do you decide to go and to make this a profession?
Well, college definitely prepared me for that. one of my main reasons for choosing Otterbein is because they do a senior showcase. So you go and you audition for casting. They fly you to New York. You audition for casting directors, agents, directors, things like that. And then that's how I signed with my agent. And so that was kind of like, well, I have an agent. So again, very privileged to have that because a lot of people don't move to New York with that. And that's kind of where it started for me professionally.
Okay.
And then moving to New York, that was like, that was the big beast, being like, oh, so there's a lot of me around now.
Right.
Like I'm in a huge pond now. And so that's when the hustling really kicked in, I guess.
Right. And I don't know how long you're there before you find yourself with an opportunity to work for the Negro Ensemble Company.
That was my first job out of New York City. So I moved there in September. That happened in October.
Yeah, man. Now you talk about an opportunity. I mean, you're working at a place that Douglas Turner Ward helped start. You've got these incredible pieces of work that are coming out there: Day of Absence, A Soldier's Play, Ceremony of Dark Old Men, and a list of alumni. Mary Alice, John Amos, Angela Bassett, Keith David. Yeah, you're working in history. You're working among history.
And it being my first gig, and then they were like, "Oh, we want you to play Martin Luther King in a musical about Martin Luther King." Right. And I was like 23, I think. But at that time, I have to say there was this young part of me being like, "Well, of course, I moved to this city, and of course, this is supposed to happen to me." And then you start to realize, oh, unemployment is a thing. That's not how it goes.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like, it was a reading, so we only did it for like 2 weeks, I think. So it was short. But the people I worked with, like, it was just I was learning so much, and the people were so kind and patient with me, because these people they have resumes.
Right.
And they like took the time to sit me down and be like, okay, think about this. This is how you tap into that emotion. This is how you make that more grounded,
right.
Things like that.
Well, I mean, because this was a musical. This was just, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charles Strauss, the composer of Annie, is doing the score. Leslie Lee, who wrote Colored People's Time, is writing the play, is writing the book.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, God rest his soul. And they're doing a musical about Dr. Martin Luther King. And they say to you, we want you to lead the workshop. You're the guy out front. Walk me through, you have to walk me through that process. Walk me through getting it. Walk me through the show itself.
Yeah, the audition is kind of fuzzy to me. I don't remember that as much as I do the process, because like I said, I was very young, but I found out, but what they wanted someone to play Martin Luther King from when he was a child until he died. So I guess they wanted someone who could kind of do that. And I always say I came out the womb looking 50. So, I guess that's kind of what that was. But they, so it was a music I've never heard before. And the script was amazing. And the fact that it was very like cool how like I would be able to go back and forth between young Martin, and then the next scene I'm Martin doing the I Have a Dream speech, and you go back to when he was in jail, and then you go back to the speech. So it was like, it was very challenging and terrifying, but it was a very rewarding process for sure.
Right.
Getting to meet all those people,
Oh, sure. And you're working in an environment where, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, for the first time, you're part of the majority. This is all people, for the most part, who look like you, who know your story.
Finally.
Right.
But not only people who look like me, but people who are in the business, like who've been in the business and are leaders in the business, and like who I still talk to some of them today. It's just like, it was such a welcome into this city that I didn't even realize I needed. Because I've always been like, well, I made it this long being the only black guy in the cast. But having that was like, oh, so this is what it feels like to be part of an ensemble, like a true ensemble. Right. Of people who get me, understand my struggle.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a unique experience, and one that I think we're coming face to face with in this particular moment in time.
For sure. For sure. It's important. We need more of that. I feel like it needs to be encouraged. It needs to be commercialized. It needs to be seen as something valuable, not just Black works, but Black theater companies. I would like to see more of that.
Right. I think that's the goal we got to be working towards. We got to be working towards the idea that there's equity in sharing all these stories, and there's value in sharing them all. The ones that are unique to a culture, but then also the ones that we say, this is everybody's story, so why isn't everybody represented on stage? I think you're going to be the generation that has to do it, man. We're going to help.
Well, the generation after me, it's this. I feel like we're laying the groundwork, but it's the people after us who are going to have to come through and carry the torch.
Yeah, keep that ball moving. So you're working in New York. You've had this incredible experience. Some might say once in a lifetime opportunity that starts your professional career in New York, and then you've kind of went on from there to build this. This pun intended, I guess, this leg of your career as a touring actor.
Yeah.
You've done Beauty and the Beast and Sister Act and Book of Mormon and Waitress, and then most recently Comfortable Way. Talk to me about the touring life. First of all, how do you get your first tour? How did you get your first tour?
First tour was Beauty and the Beast, and that was actually a process. Like, I was in for that show a lot. Auditioning, and then when I finally got it, it's funny, like most of the tours the jobs I've done, I auditioned for it for a long period of time, then I just get the call randomly out the middle of nowhere being like, got the job. I'm like, 7 months later. No, Beauty and the Beast is that way, and then I was on that for about a year, and then I don't know, it just kind of, and then Sister Act, Dreamgirls happened after that.
Okay.
While I was auditioning for Beauty and the Beast, I auditioned for Dreamgirls. And then Dreamgirls went to Japan, came back, went out with Sister Act like 4 months later. So it's kind of like, I don't know why people always say, how do you do that? How do you live on the road like that? But I think it's because I'm good at making any place home. Like any place, anywhere I go, it's like I can settle and just focus on work,
Right. Touring of life is obviously very unique because you're not grounded in a home, but it's also grueling. It can also be really grueling. How do you continue to be successful at it? I mean, what's your regimen? How do you stay focused on the gig? How do you keep yourself?
I always try to communicate with someone in my family every day. With my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother. I just keep that connection going because it gives me the sense of like, I'm doing it for you, or like, I'm just trying to make you proud. I'm doing it for home. It kind of gives me something to look back to where I don't get so caught up in the world when I'm not being at home. But I do that. I try to keep a workout regimen, something that's constant everywhere I go. Like I do this always, no matter where I am. But really, touring is not for everybody. I know people who I was on tour, they was like, this is the worst. I will never do this again. But like I said, I think I try my best to make the best out of every moment and just focus on the work. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's there for. That's what you're there for, is to work. And that's just kind of why I try to focus on.
Right. What's been the show that you've enjoyed doing the most on tour?
Book of Mormon was a great time only because that was another show where I felt like I was able to tap into what I do, which I feel like is musical comedy or just comedy in general. That's where I feel comfortable. So it was the first time I'm like, I'm doing a true comedy and I'm enjoying it. But the show that I felt like helped me grow the most, or like challenged me the most, would be Come From Away, for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Why so?
Because you've seen the show, yeah?
Yes.
I'm playing so many different roles, and I'm like, it's like the moment you step on that stage, because there's no intermission. So the moment I'm on that stage, it's go, 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 go. My longest time off stage is 2 minutes, I think. And so it's just go, go, go. And that is challenging in itself. But then switching from roles to characters and trying to make every character believable and there's parts where I'm playing a character for literally 30 seconds, and I have to make that character seem like they should be there. You know what I'm saying? Like they're valid. That there's a reason they're here, and that's the challenge, is making every single one important, no matter how much time they have on stage. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's. I saw the show a couple years back, and I walked away from it saying that this might be the best piece of theater I've ever seen in my life, and maybe because it was the most needed at the moment. It's so resonant, and it's so it's powerful, and it's designed that way, but also its subject matter is very, very strong without being maudlin, without getting into the morbid or the overly sad. What's been your experience with that particular show as far as telling that story to an audience in Australia, particularly?
Well, that was the biggest concern, I think, like going over there, telling the story. I'm like, how are the Australians going to take a story about 9/11? Like, do they care that much? Did it affect Australia that much? Do they even remember it? You know, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, it sold out shows, and people come up crying. There's people who saw it like 28 times. It's just, I think it's just proof that we all as humans have this common need of feeling safe, feeling loved. And, you know, I was doing the show during the Australian bushfires. Right. And that was everyone trying to come together to help people who need. And so like the show at that time was needed then, you know. Yeah, it's about 9/11, but at the end of the day, it's about community and helping people when they need you. Right. And it just resonated very well over there. And I heard it does the same in London and everywhere else it performs.
Right. It's stunning how connected we are. I remember being struck, having seen it, that I was in the middle of New York City. There's a section where we hear the president for the first time, and the actor that I saw puts on a semblance of a dialect to give us the intimation of George Bush, but it never once felt like, and this is the middle of very liberal New York, it never once felt like they wanted a laugh or they were trying to get a quick jab in. We all sat in reverence and awe and a shared respect for that moment and that man and the level of leadership that he had to offer in that time. It was pretty unbelievable to watch. Not to mention the fact that the show goes on forever without them ever once giving us a moment to applaud.
Yeah, which I love. I think that's the appeal of it, is because, you know, the nature, the story of the show, these people who are constantly helping, moving, not sleeping, trying to make sure these people are fed and taken care of. And I think that's genius how in the show it's like how you feel watching it. It's like, we don't have time to applaud. We got work to do, you know?
Right.
I think that's just genius. And the turntable as well. I just think how that works. It's just really smart. But yeah, I just think that's what makes the show unique. And going back to the George Bush thing, our director was so particular about, we're not trying to do a George Bush impersonation. Mm-hmm. We just need those slight things that let people know that that's who we're talking about, or who's telling the story.
Right. Yeah, it was it's an incredible piece, and I couldn't have been more proud for you. I'm proud for you, and I'm just sitting on the sideline. I was like, he got it. And everything that I've seen about it says you are fantastic. You were fantastic in the show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
it's a good time. And I think that's why, you know, when you feel like when you connect with something, mm-hmm. then what you're connecting to, the audience feels that as well. You know, when I teach kids, I always say, you have to care about the material, because if you don't care, we as the audience don't care, you know?
Yeah. Has there ever been anything that you've done where you just thought, this is a perfect example of why you have to care, because I don't in this moment? You don't have to necessarily tell me what it is.
For sure. Totally been in those situations. It's like, I'm on stage thinking, what am I getting for dinner tonight? You know? And I'm sure it shows.
It doesn't feel as, yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to this question, and we've talked a little bit about race early on, and we've talked about shows that you're toured on, and I'm fascinated, and I don't know if this is a question you want to mess around with, then we can always just rip it right out. But, since 2012 when it debuted, Book of Mormon has been in the center of one firestorm or another. And so it seemed a little disingenuous not to talk a little bit about the show, particularly in the context of the current environment. And it's often getting criticized for, I guess, capitalizing on racist tropes. But I'm curious to hear your perspective as an actor who's been in the show, and I know several who've been in the show. Because what we seem to be talking about it now as though getting rid of Book of Mormon will help solve the racial inequities on Broadway. Just what's your feeling about that show, about how it connects to people, how it feels as a performer of color to be in it? How do you feel about that piece?
Well, like I said, that show came to me at a point in my life where I needed it. I needed the job. I needed employment. And I knew what the show was about. And of course, I knew it was offensive. I think that's why it is so popular, because it's offensive. But at the end of the day, I always said, I'm here to do a job. I'm the messenger. My job is to tell the story, not judge it, Right. But to say we should get rid of it, I think that is a conversation we should have. But I think if we're going to talk about that, then we got a lot of stuff.
A lot of discussion. Yes.
We have a lot of things to discuss if we're going to start that conversation, right. But at the end of the day, it is South Park. Like, that is the writers of South Park. If you go back and look at that show, again, we have to go and talk about a lot of stuff with that too. But when you go to see a show like that, you shouldn't. I don't think anyone was expecting it to be a hug and a kiss. Like, it is in your face, and it is something that's going to be offensive. And it's an exaggerated telling of all the people involved. Like, I have friends who are Mormon. They're not like that. Right. I have friends who are from Africa. That's not what it is. So since it's all exaggerated, since it's all told in this, I don't know the word, exaggerated,
kind of
heightened reality, then I think that you kind of have to just take that for what it is. Yes, it should be discussed, and yes, there are things about it that you're like, oh gosh, that's not good. But that was way before Black Lives Matter, this movement.
Right.
We should have been having this discussion 10 years ago when it was released, if you cared that much.
Sure. Well, I did some research, I did some looking into it, and it was interesting. In 2011, the year that show opened on Broadway, there were roughly 38 shows that opened that year. 19 of those shows had exactly 0% African Americans that they hired. 25% of those shows, or 25 of those shows, of the 38 shows, had 10% or less. Book of Mormon, 50% of its cast are people of color. Mm-hmm. 50% of its cast. And so I think it's a little bit of an interesting conversation. Now, I agree with you. We definitely should have conversations like these. But does that mean that we're going to have the conversation about Book of Mormon, because Book of Mormon will solve the racial inequity, but not have a conversation about all of the shows in which I or people like me don't even exist in the world of the play? So it is a conversation that is going to be interesting to have. It's a conversation that's valuable, but I think it's very simplistic to think, here's the problem to all our woes.
And again, the show's been out for a while, and right. And I know we're having this awakening right now.
right.
Like, people existing in America.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's to get rid of it, I don't think it's going to fix what we need to have fixed.
Right.
In the industry and in America, in that case.
And I think there's something to be said for the fact that what we hope for is eventually to be part of all stories, be stories that make fun of us, but also to be fun of stories where we get the girl. And I don't mean us as a monolith. I mean this particular Black character in the play. The problem is we exist in a systemic environment that has said, well, universally, this is what people of color are, or Black people are. And we're like, wait a minute, that's no. And then everything is then looked at under that lens. But it's a conversation for all components.
Well, it starts with not making the person's race, what's driving the story. I mean, I think those stories are necessary. We need those stories, but sometimes why can't we just have a guy who's in love with a girl and their race is never mentioned?
Right.
Music, especially in musical theater. I think it's really special when you see that live, and I think it just goes back to having people write these stories where these writers don't have a certain race in mind. It's
Right.
like anyone can play this. And like I can count on my fingers and toes how many times I've been told, could you make that more Black? Could you make that more urban? Could you make that? And I think that's just the trap that the industry falls into, is those stereotypes, because it's easy and it's safe, but doesn't mean it's right.
Oh, for sure. And and as long as we can continue to sell you on that level, you are Black, which means you're inherently different than the audience, which makes an assumption about what the audience is. But it also continues that idea that you're different. You don't mean the same. Your life is not the same as ours. I'm going to include you in our stories because that way we'll understand a little bit better. No, you're just continuing to make me more different, which is why you can see me as it's okay to kill that person in 8.5 minutes with my knee on his neck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about, people don't want to do the work. They don't want to, they'd be like, let's just put them over there and have them do that thing that they do, instead of being like, what else, like what layers does this person have? Instead of getting to know the actor on what kind of actor they are, they're like, well, first we're going to put you in this stereotypical role and just do that because that's what you do, And it's like, but you have to, like, as a director, as the creative, as all those things, you have to do the work to get to know your actors and what they're capable of, especially when you're creating a role, or like workshopping a show. I think that's important.
Is it possible to, now that we're in this moment where everybody's focused on this awakening, is it possible to have this conversation in a real and genuine way? Do you believe that it's possible? Or is it simply a product of the country we live in? Is Broadway, is theater only going to be reflective of this kind of awakening if America is?
Yeah, that's a good question, because, theater isn't just an American art form. So it is something that needs to be had globally. But I think what's happening now has turned into something global, So now is the time, because everyone's listening, thank God. I feel like we've been shouting for a decade, here, centuries. But now everyone's listening. So now that we have your ear, let's bring up all this stuff, these issues that need to be addressed. So I think now is the perfect time to talk about it. But like I've said before, it needs to be a continuing conversation, not just now this is trending, let's talk about it. We need to hold people's feet to the fire. We need to let people know that, remember what you said 2 years ago in 2020 when we were all Black Lives Matter? Yeah, that still applies today. It wasn't just a trend. Like, we still mean it, So it's just this idea of reminding people that we gotta check ourselves and think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why we have it plugged in is because we believe very strongly that your journey informs mine. My journey informs the next guy. And that there are kids somewhere who are going to be looking back through the artwork of Come From Away in Australia and see you and go, I want to do that. And maybe their journey will be modeled after yours. What's the advice that this age Kolby has for that kid?
Be you, and being you is enough. You don't have to be, don't try to be like me, don't try to be like that other guy. Be you, because that's what's going to be your ticket. I used to always think, well, if I can just be like that person, they'll like me. But that person already exists, so they don't need me to be like them. They want me to be me. So my encouragement is always be yourself and be unapologetically yourself, and be kind and work hard. That's my motto.
Amen. That's a pretty good one. So what's in this next phase of your career, once we get out of quarantine from home and all of that stuff, what's exciting you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm back in New York, and this is like, I feel like I'm, I'm just kind of like just waiting to, because I am set to go back to Australia to open another city with Come From Away. And, but now that's kind of up in the air. I think all the theater people are like, what's next? So I'm just looking forward to getting back to work because I love it and that's what I do. I don't find my worth in it, but, it is something that I enjoy. But if there's one thing that this being shut and locked down has done for me, it's forced me to think about things that I've put off, like just for myself and like making those connections with people I haven't talked to in a while, So quarantine's been hard, but it's like a blessing and a curse in that way.
Right. Huh. I think that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, with each one of these, we try to, I try to use the Bernard Pivot questionnaire just because I find it so telling to hear the answers from these incredible artists. And so I'm going to ask you a series of quick fire questions and just let your answer just come to you. So beginning with, what is your favorite word?
Peace.
What is your least favorite word?
Can't. It's 2 words, but contraction, I guess.
No. Yeah, can't count. So contraction, big takes of one. That's strong. That's powerful. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, emotionally?
Encouragement. Yeah. Support. Encouragement and support, for sure.
Yeah. And what turns you off?
Ignorance, not reading the room, lack of education.
Not reading the room.
Not reading the room.
I'll be curious to hear that the example of that particular story. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to that one. What is your favorite curse word?
Probably shit.
Love it. What sound or noise do you love to hear?
Birds chirping.
Dig it. And what sound and noise do you hate?
People who chew with their mouth open, like foods, like snacking sounds. Drives me insane.
What profession, other than your own, would you like to attempt?
Being a lawyer. Yeah, for sure.
That is a very common answer among actors.
I think because we like the performance of it all. We like, like everything's a show,
Everybody thinks of being a lawyer as being Billy Flynn in Chicago.
Like how to get away, and it's just not the case. But in my mind, I said, know that,
I love it. Which profession would you not like to do?
I'm not crazy about like outdoor professions. Like, I mean, I love animals, but I just don't, anything. And I love nature, but I don't know if I would want it to be a job.
Huh.
Yeah.
Business at the zoo is okay, but
yeah, I can go. I love going to the zoo, but checking in 5 times a week, maybe not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, you made it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So before you go, give me an example of somebody not reading the room.
Oh God, I gotta keep names out of it.
Okay.
No, but like, and this has happened multiple times with people I've worked with. Is especially on that first day of rehearsal, where people feel like that's their time to, again, put you in a box, and this is what you do, and this is like, so Kolby, you do this, great, and I feel like not reading the room. You're not reading the room because you're not giving me the same respect that you give all the other actors. Why don't you just see it as the first day of rehearsal and be like, let's all come together and see what we can do, you know, or like just people who are inconsiderate when it comes to, when we're giving notes and people want to argue with the director. Read the room. Like we're all getting notes. We're all learning here. We're all trying to make the show better. Things like that.
Yeah. It's been such a joy talking with you and hearing where you are at this point in your journey. And I can't tell you how struck I am with how all of those pieces, starting with your parents at the very beginning, put you on this incredible road in terms of your confidence. When I first met you, you were a very young man. You were just first doing your theater, and now you're kind of like, I was in New York, and I thought, why wouldn't I get this job? I think that's incredible.
It's all confidence, and it's probably a false confidence because I'm terrified at every audition I go to, and I'm always second guessing myself. But I've kind of tricked myself into thinking you're going to get the job, and that's ridiculous. But it adds a level of confidence and fearlessness that I feel like you have to take on this city and this business. It's just necessary. Not cocky, but confident.
Right. Well, I hope that you know that visual image you were looking for when you were a young man, that person that you saw that was the older gentleman who was doing theater, you're that guy. You're actually now that guy in this moment. That's who you are.
Turn around, go the other way. He's looking at no, thank you.
You got it whether you want it or not, brother. You're there.
Well,
and even I'm looking at you and I'm
I know. And like I said, thank you, because I don't think you realize how much of an impact you had on me growing up and seeing another Black man in theater. You are like the artistic director, like leading, and that's so important. I always say, even in the educational system, we need more Black male teachers, even just to show that leading is important because it gives you somebody to look up to.
I am grateful and humbled, and I will try to be worthy of it, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Keep doing great work out there in the world. Keep sharing beautiful stories and being that example, because somebody is going to be following your path.
I hope so. Good luck. I am Kolby Kindle. I am an artist, and I am plugged in.